Let's see. Allahu Akbar. Alright, let's see if this is going live. Right. Allahu Akbar. People are joining. Let me begin my... I thought I'm going to, since this is going to be about demonic possessions. Allahu Akbar. And I cast thee to eternal damnation. Thought I was going to make a little effort, do myself up for for this one. Assalamu alaikum, folks. Inna alhamdulillah wa kafah. Wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulih al-Mustafa. Wa ala ibadi alladhina irtada. Wa man bihudahu mihtada. Wa bi athari ahli al-Madinah taqtafa. Wa ba'ad. Fasalamu Allahi alaikum wa rahmatuhu ta'ala wa barakatuh. أهلا وسهلا مومو. شكرا شكرا شكرا. بارك الله فيكم. Right, people. أهلا وسهلا بكم. عمر وعليكم السلام. Right, so let's see what's gonna go down tonight. Yasin, أهلا وسهلا. I knew Yasin was going to log on for this one. Right, so maybe I should do the whole discussion like this in my this mode. I gotta say, the Silhams are slick though. Right, so right, Salik, I'm just waiting for a few people to log on. We're going to begin this discussion, insha'Allah ta'ala. Demonic possessions. Right. And why? First of all, no eyes today, just trying to recuperate from this cold, or flu, or man flu, as it is. No, not today. I mean, it's been a few days I've cut my hair, so... Let's see, people. Let's see what's going down. Okay, so... Right, let's, inshallah, begin this... This is a discussion. I wanted to... Right, thinking it's a Monday. Well, not quite, not quite. So the KKK, okay, Momo, but this one's black though. Hashtag Black Matters. So, the thing is, right, why do I think this discussion is an important discussion? Red lenses, that's awesome. I used to have some red lenses. Right, so the thing is, look, I want to highlight the importance of this topic of possessions. Right, so first of all, just to clarify, I will get into more detail, and I will also be at some point doing a proper, this is more like a dialogical video, a discussion video where I'm interacting with certain, with your questions, with my input, but it's theme-based as opposed to the Monday nights with Mufti. But I will be producing in time to come, bi'idhnillah, a proper video dedicated, a properly, professionally constructed video on the concept of demonic possessions, okay? Right, the thing is, this is actually my workspace, my office, my home office anyway, where I work from. So it's not another dimension. If I just go through there is my library. Anyway, so There are no such things as demonic possessions in Islam. Okay, these things do not exist. It's not that they just don't exist in Islam, they do not exist in the real world. Okay, there is no such thing as a jinn possessing a human being or an individual. I will highlight some of the evidences behind this, but I need you to understand that this matter, first of all, how we arrived at this widespread myth. This is a widespread belief amongst Muslims, and not just Muslims, any communities, whether it's, they could be of any faith, right? People tend to have this belief in spiritual possessions, demonic possessions. I mean, you could go outside of the Abrahamic faiths into people of faith or just animism or whatever it is. They seem to have these kind of beliefs that the jinn come and possess people. Or, I mean, they may not call them the jinn, they may call them spirits, demons, ghosts. So these views are, not only are they irrational, unreasonable, and nonsensical, but they are actually in contradiction with true Islamic beliefs. Okay, so let's take a look at that first of all. So what are we saying to start off with? We're saying that there is no such thing as demonic possessions. The question then will come that what are they then? And I will expand on that these things are really just psychological. It's psychological phenomenon taking place, and we can expand on that in a moment, and you guys can share your questions. Does Area 51 have jinns? More likely to have aliens. I have watched The Exorcist, right? So right now, so let's take a look at how we know from the Quran, to start off with, that no such thing exists like this. To start off with, in Islam, we have an understanding that an insan is mukallaf. He is liable, okay, or she is liable for their actions. To become possessed is to suppose that there is a suspended state of liability, because obviously if right now I am not me, I'm a demon, which many will have you believe, then I suppose there is no liability. I can't be liable or punished or even held accountable for what this demon is doing. This will destroy the concept of taklif, of liability, because demons, allegedly, I mean, these demons, these jinn, they're not of our realm, so we cannot see them, we cannot, we have this concept, we do believe in the concept of jinn. What that means in Islam is that Allah has told us that there is another creation called the jinn. He hasn't told us too much about them, just that they're in a totally different realm, and that they are not perceptible. So people then guessed and tried to figure out things, and are they huge? Do they look like us? Do they look like these kind of horns and wings, or are they microscopic? Some ulama have said they're so small that you can't see them. Reverse camera, okay, or it's a jinn. It's a jinn, as in Gin. It's a gin and tonic. No, I'm joking. So the thing is, look, so the jinn exist. The question isn't about their existence. The question is, do they have this, do they impact human beings? There is no clear evidence to show them impacting human beings or interacting really with human beings in any meaningful way. There isn't even clear evidence on the fact that they are accountable beings. There isn't clear. There is inferential data, so there's evidence which we can infer that it implies that they too, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ, or أَيُّهَا الثَّقَلَانِ, that these, the understanding is what is being referred to is ins wal jinn, although that's not unanimous either. Some people interpret it differently, that thaqalan is referring to insan, different types of insan. But the point is, this is why I believe Imam Abu Hanifa and other people, when asked that will the jinn be punished in the afterlife, they did tawaqquf. They just said, we don't know, and so we're not going to, this is something we're incapable of knowing. But the point is that yes, this creation exists, whatever it is, we don't truly know about their essence. We have some hints, but we don't truly know. People think, oh, they're made of fire, they must be like whatever, but that doesn't mean anything in a true sense, okay? Because obviously to say man is made of clay, we don't look like, okay, brown, clay, but okay, not everybody's brown. So the thing is, human beings don't look like clay. So it's not so to just assume that we know what the jinn are like is at best an assumption. Right, anyway, so this question here, this dialogue is not about the existence of the jinn. It's about the belief that people have that jinn come and possess people and they stay possessed with them, and they ruin their lives. Okay. Now we have to understand, first of all, let's take a look at the Quranic scenario. So the first principle we drew from a general, so many verses of the Quran, is the fact that there is taklif. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. There is taklif. We have liability. Liability is batil, is invalid if we are possessed. Okay, it's invalid. So let's take a look at another clear verse of the Quran that completely destroys this concept of possession. The verse in Surah Ibrahim, verse 22, that Allah speaks, لَمَّا قُضِيَ الْأَمْرِ, that when the whole affair has been settled. And this is, Allah is depicting the Day of Judgment. And He says that when everything has been settled and determined, at that point the shaitan will emerge, and he will say that he will say that to insan, that why are you blaming me? Why are you blaming me? That إِنَّمَا وَعَدْتُكُمْ فَأَخْلَفْتُكُمْ, I only promised you, like I gave you a promise, and I just went against my promise, that's all. مَا كَانَ لِي عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْ سُلْطَانٍ, I had zero capability of forcing you. فَلَا تَلُومُونِي وَلُومُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ, don't blame me, blame yourselves. That He says, إِنَّمَا دَعَوْتُكُمْ, all I did at best was just invite you. I just enticed you. I just made something appealing to you. That فَاسْتَجَبْتُمْ لِي, so you responded to me. I didn't force you. مَا كَانَ لِي عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْ سُلْطَانٍ, I didn't have no force over you. I simply said, hey, why don't, that's a good idea. You did it. Nobody was telling you to do it. Right? So the thing is now, okay, so this is a clear verse of the Quran showing that the daddy of them all, Daddy Devil himself, he is incapable of anything beyond simple insinuations, beyond simple alluring enticements, nothing beyond that. He is incapable of it. Then there are several ahadith that the Prophet ﷺ, the Sahaba came to him and said, sometimes we find in ourselves certain things we find in ourselves certain things that we struggle to speak about, that they're so immense, so difficult. And the Prophet said that's sarihul iman, that is true faith. And then he said, Alhamdulillah alladhi radda amra shaitan ila al-waswasa. that all praise be to Allah who restricted the shaitan from simple, to at best, waswasa, whispers, insinuations, at best. These are the clear words of the Prophet ﷺ. Then we have this whole culture, what we've ended up with. The other important thing before I say anything and take a look at some of these questions that you're sharing is we have to understand what was the purpose of Islam. The purpose of Islam was to guide people to one creator. That was the purpose, to rid humanity of superstitions, nonsensical beliefs, irrationalities, to rid the dunya, people, humanity, of these kind of superstitions. Believing in demonic possessions is nothing but a superstition. It is nothing but a superstition, right? It is antithetical to the message of Tawheed. OCDs it depends. Obsessive compulsive disorders, they could also be neurological as well. Okay. Right, so, now let's take a look at people who say there are jinn possessions and why do they say this. Right, first of all, let's look at the Quran and Hadith. Now, there is no single evidence, listen to me here, people. There is no single clear-cut evidence in the Quran or in the Sunnah that is established sahih. It must be sahih and sarih. It must not be subject to criticism, and it must be conclusive. There isn't a single hadith or a single verse of the Quran that speaks of jinn possessions. In fact, the verse that I told you, it speaks the opposite. It actually condemns this kind of belief. So now people will say, yes, but there are some hadith. I tell you, every single hadith that has been brought forward for jinn possession has been criticized. There is not a clear, conclusive sahih hadith. The famous ones that you will see of people like Ya'la ibn Murrah, that he was from Thaqif. It's interesting, by the way, because the few narrations they tend to bring are always from Bani Thaqif, this tribe of Thaqif. Uthman ibn Abil As from Thaqif again. But anyway, this hadith of Ya'la ibn Murrah, which is in the Musnad of Ahmad, where he says, I saw three things the Messenger of Allah never saw. That I saw three things accompanying the Messenger of Allah that nobody else ever saw. And one of them was this lady had a child and she said, oh my God, he's got some issues. And the Prophet said he's possessed and he did this thing. And he said, get out, O enemy of Allah, and so on. And this hadith is not sahih, right? It is... You might say some people tried to prove it to be sahih. First of all, the chain has been criticized. The popular transmission, it has a rawi in there by the name of Al-Manhan ibn Amr, who has been criticized, has been declared weak by people like Yahya ibn Qattan and other people. They've declared him weak, they've not accepted him. The thing is, even if you look at the matan, the content of the hadith, this companion is saying, I saw something which nobody else ever saw. That in itself shows you that this issue, wait a minute, if demons were lurking around possessing people, then surely the Prophet would have clearly warned us about them. Clearly in a sahih, undisputed hadith. Anyway, there is another hadith that people like to use a lot, by the way. Now, that is a hadith of Uthman ibn Abil As. This person who comes to visit the Prophet ﷺ in a delegation. He comes in the year 9 Hijri. And he's also from the tribe of Thaqif. They're all Thaqafi. Did Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi have a role in this? Or I need that meme here. That one. Right, but the thing is, look, Uthman ibn Abil As, he comes to the Prophet and there's several narrations. The narrations speak of him saying he's struggling to retain the Quran. Okay, he's struggling to retain the Quran. Now, in some narrations, he's saying, I'm struggling with something. He just says, I'm struggling. And then the Prophet calls him. Now, there is, let me tell you the Sahih narration, okay, that he is struggling with the Quran. That nobody disputes. He comes to the Prophet ﷺ, this is in Tabrani, this is in Sahih Muslim, and the Prophet simply places his hand on his chest and says to him, why don't you go lead people in Salah? Umma qawma, go lead your people, فَإِنَّ مِنْهُمْ الضَّعِيفُ وَالْكَبِيرُ وَالصَّغِيرُ and so on. That they have all kinds of people amongst them, the elderly, the weak. And he goes and he says, Wallahi, in some narrations he says, when the Prophet placed his hand on my chest, I felt the coolness of his hand. And in some narrations he says, after that the Quran was always with me, like as in I never struggled to memorize it. Now this incident is not disputed. What is disputed are these other narrations. Now there is a narration that is brought in the books like Ibn Majah and other books, that the Prophet placed his hand on his chest and he said to him, Ukhruj ya adu Allah, get out of here, you enemy of Allah. And then in some narrations he says, I saw this thing go, or I did this, or I did that. None of these are proven. All of these chains are criticized. The popular one they bring has somebody called Muhammad ibn Abdullah al-Ansari, who has been criticized by people. They say later in age his memory was so badly affected. Abu Dawood says تغير تغيرا شديدا, that so severely his memory was impacted. I mean, so not acceptable. Then this hadith comes in several incidents, by the way. Several narrations like this. Not a single narration where the Prophet is saying, oh enemy of Allah, come out, is established. Not a single one. Imam Nawawi in the Sahih Muslim narration comments by saying that this, when the Prophet ﷺ, when he's saying I'm struggling with the Quran, because he uses this wording and he says that I'm struggling with the Quran, and in one wording he says I find the shaitan being a barrier between me and the Quran. Imam Nawawi, who is commenting on Sahih Muslim, he says this does not have to mean jinn possessions. He says this could quite simply mean that, he says this has the possibility of meaning, when he's saying the shaitan becoming a barrier between me and the Quran, is that he's talking about arrogance. Because he leads his people, so people say, wow, that guy is so solid, look at the way he recites the Quran. So he's fearing this, his ego. This is what Imam Nawawi is writing on his commentary. And he says that is a very plausible understanding. And the other understanding is waswasa, that the guy keeps doubting, a bit OCD if you like. That he keeps thinking, oh, have I read this, haven't I read this? And he keeps thinking like that. And then Imam Nawawi says, by the way, all of the narrations to do with Uthman ibn Abil As, I believe them to be talking about the same incident. These are not different incidents. And he says, and he, to me, he says, my understanding is very clear that he had waswasa. He had OCD. He says he was not affected by the jinn or the shayateen. This is Imam Nawawi commenting on this incident. And this is a famous incident used by people who like to believe in this whole exorcism culture and jinn possessions. Right, so the thing is, now, anyway, there's another narration as well that people use of this woman called Aban bint Wazi' ibn Zari', who is most likely the granddaughter of the Sahabi Zari', her grandfather. Her actual name was Hind, and people in this incident, she speaks about her grandfather coming to the Prophet with a child and saying that, look, oh, the child is whatever, ill or something, and he says, oh, he's possessed and he's got some get out of here, some demon, and people see something coming out. A very weak, extremely weak narration, Okay, Dhahabi declared it weak, other people declared it weak. Even Albani, who is sometimes very lenient, he even said, he never said weak, he said wa qissa, al-qissa wahiya jiddan. He said it's extremely weak, it's so unbelievably weak. Anyway, so look, there is nothing from the Quran or Sunnah that proves jinn possession. Okay, it does not exist. Right, it is a figment of people's imagination. Now, so okay, let's clarify that. Now, the next thing is you ask people who believe in jinn possessions that why do you believe in this? I want to know, is your belief in this textual? Is it rational? Which one is it? How have you arrived at this belief? It is definitely not textual, and I can guarantee you they did not simply choose to believe in jinn because they've read something and they thought, oh, wow, okay. So it's like saying, well, why do you believe in, I don't know, like let's say, for example, that if we're to ask them that zakat should be given in a certain way, oh, well, because I've read it here. That is clear. Their belief in zakat being given in a certain way is only textual. They didn't just one day conjure that up. When you ask them, why do you believe in demonic possessions? You see, we can backtrack one step further. Why do you believe in the jinn? They will say, we believe in the jinn because it's textual. Okay. The woman who was assassinated, who took off her clothes and reported that this was Al-Uzza in form of this man. This hadith is not sahih. Okay. Sa'id Suhail, that is not an authentic narration. By the way, I want to add here, some people say, you know, this, why did the Prophet put his hand on Uthman ibn Abil As when, if there was nothing metaphysical happening here? If there was nothing to do with the shayateen, why did the Prophet put his hand on his chest? Hit him. Like when they say hit, it doesn't have to be like, it could just be simply like as in hit his chest like that. Why did he do that? Now you have to understand that these are certain mannerisms that certain people and certain cultures and certain practices have. And the Prophet ﷺ doing this was symbolic. How do we know this? How do we know this? Let's go to a totally different incident. A hadith of Jarir ibn Abdullah al-Bajali. Okay, a companion who in his time there was, in the Prophet's time, there was this person called Khath'am who had made a version of the Kaaba in Yemen. They used to call it Al-Kaaba al-Yamaniyah. And they were trying to, by it, ridicule Islam and do all these things. And the Prophet asked that who will go and see to it? And we need this removed. Okay, who will do that for me? So he said to Jarir, and this is a Sahih Hadith, it's in Bukhari and Muslim. He said to Jarir, Ya Jarir, Ala turihuni min hadha al-bayt? Like, won't you eliminate that, get rid of this pseudo Kaaba that they've made? And he said yes, and he says to the Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, that I struggle to sit still on a saddle. I struggle with this. Like when he rides, he didn't have confidence, or he had some issues going on. He couldn't, it wasn't a physical apparent issue, but he had an issue. He says, I struggle that la athbut, I can't seem to be steady on a saddle. What does the Prophet do? In the hadith, it's in Bukhari and Muslim. فَضَّرَبَ صَدْرَهُ بِيَدِهِ. He hit his chest with his hand. And he then said to him, now go. And Jarir says, Subhanallah, like I felt the coolness. And so this is an incident, nothing to do with shayateen. Nothing to do with demons and stuff like this. So this incident or this feature of the Prophet putting his hand on people's chests or hitting their chest and giving them reassurance. This is a symbolic gesture that you see in many ahadith. It's not restricted to just extracting demons, okay? So just to clarify that. Anyway, So this understanding anyway, coming to this, you see, cultures have always believed in demons and stuff like this way before Islam even came to them. When Islam came to them, all they did was Islamicized it. And I've given this example before, that in let's say the Indo-Pak world, they have this concept of the Churel, and this lady with long hair and backwards feet, and she hangs about by swamps and things like this. And now, when Islam came, what they did was they simply said, well, we don't have a new category called the Churel, so what this must be talking about is the Jinn. So they just superimposed Islam upon their existing cultural beliefs. The thing is, but why do people have these beliefs? This is a more interesting question. The thing is that, you see, we struggle with interpreting or understanding the unexplained. Things, the kind of X-files that exist out there, inexplicable data, it really freaks us out as human beings. You see, human beings, by our very nature, we are very inquisitive creatures. We seek meaning in things. We want to know the reasons behind things. So, when somebody starts all of a sudden having a seizure, he starts or she starts going into some kind of a shock mode, it scares us because it's abnormal behavior. When somebody starts talking in tongues, they start talking in almost semi-languages or things like this. When somebody suddenly starts vomiting in a horrific manner, when somebody rolls their eyes back and does things which look really scary to us, it freaks us out. Quite rightly so. So we don't know how to interpret that. When somebody starts to pretend to be somebody else, when I use the term pretend, but I'm not saying it is actually a pretend, but when they manifest as a different person, we don't know how to answer and explain that. Historically, they definitely did not know. So in recent times, alhamdulillah, a lot more breakthrough has taken place in things like psychology. We can now explain many of these things. Schizophrenia. You have things like borderline personality disorders. You have multiple personality disorders, which are now referred to as dissociative identity disorders. You see, let's take a look at this DID, right? Dissociative identity disorder. All of us at some point have kind of zoned off somewhere. You're thinking and you kind of zone off. Almost like a daydreaming state. We've all done that at times. You're kind of there and you just lose focus and you're in something else. And imagine not being able to come back from that. You see, that is what it's almost like. This dissociative identity disorder. There's been many studies done on people who claim on possession, by the way. Most possessed people have been victims of trauma, especially early on in their life, right? As young people, they've been, whether it's been exposed to abuse, violent abuse, sexual abuse, other kind of trauma, the loss of a supportive network. I mean, they've had some kind of immense struggle going on in their lifestyle, in their lifetime, especially in their early life. The mind tries to cope with what's going on. Now, we are all different. Some people, we can do it. Many people can do it. They can cope with several kind of stress elements. For other people, the mind, as a coping defense mechanism, will create split personalities that divide off and splinter off from the original personality. There's actually a recent movie as well called Split, which is very interesting, speaking about this person with DID. But this can explain, a chemical imbalance can explain nowadays. You see, when these people have these disorders, when they take certain drugs, they're suppressed. this is different to schizophrenia. In schizophrenia, a person hears voices. They have hallucinations. They have delusional beliefs. They don't have necessarily multiple personalities, but somebody's talking to them, telling them to do something, instructing them, chasing them. This would exactly, people would just interpret that as, oh, well, this person is possessed. Another reason why people go into sometimes possession, or this kind of angle, is they want to, there's an element of displacement of guilt. So people can't struggle, they struggle to cope with. So for example, I went to see an exorcist once. And by the way, I'm more than I'm open to taking an invitation from anybody who wants to prove me wrong. You can take me to an exorcism, okay? But please, only take me to the biggest and baddest of them all, right? Because I don't want to waste my time on just little, just pathetic kind of incidents. I want to see the biggest and baddest of what you've got. All of this phenomena can be explained, right? So people will see somebody going into seizure. So you have something, by the way, called you have what they do call them pseudo seizures as well, but psychogenic seizures. They've actually monitored people through electroencephalograms, seen that they do not have epilepsy. Okay, but they will have a psychogenic seizure, that it's triggered by the mind and it has a psychosomatic effect, and the person will and usually they go into these seizures where they arch their back and it spasms in such a kind of strong manner that it actually appears as though they're levitating off the bed. You can go on YouTube and you can see doctors actually showing you these. They're called psychogenic seizures. The famous case of Emily Rose. Upon inspection, I know the movie's been made about her, the exorcism of Emily Rose, but upon actual analysis, the doctors had identified she had psychogenic seizures. She was not actually possessed. I mean, the way people, the Catholic Church, and these people were obviously obsessed with her being possessed. The other thing is, you have to understand that this leads to the abuse and deaths in extreme cases of people. Exorcisms is not just an okay, if you believe in it or you don't. This is ridiculous. People are abused in the name of exorcism. There have been deaths, several deaths. Right? You can count, just Google that exorcism's gone wrong. Google that deaths resulting from exorcism. You will see in the UK, children have been killed in the name of exorcisms. They've been abused brutally. They've had things shoved down their mouths and suffocated almost in the name of expelling this jinn out of them. In America, there's been many more cases by Roman Catholic priests and other people who strongly adhere to this exorcism culture. Where the famous cases where women have been tortured, even today, women are tortured because they believe these women are possessed. So this is the exact thing that Islam came to eradicate. And people say, no, but there's things which science can't explain, and there's things which... Look, nobody is saying everybody can explain everything, but they're working on several things. They know many things today that a few decades ago they did not know. So just because something cannot clearly be explained... Imam Ghazali, by the way, in his book, which has been edited by Sheikh Zahid al-Kawthari, it's a very small, called Qanun al-Ta'wil, he ridicules this concept of talking in tongues and when a person has gone into sara', this kind of seizure, that it is a jinn. He says this is غير معقول. He says it is irrational, unacceptable, intellectually to accept that a jinn has possessed this person. Okay. The other thing to understand is, why why do the jinn possess people? Why do they possess them? Tell me. So, in fact, let me ask this question, people. Tell me, why do the jinn possess people? Why do you think the jinn possess people? Give me some answers. Let's see. What are the answers? Why would the jinn... So I'm a jinn going about on my merry day, chilling, as jinns be, right? So, why would I want to possess somebody and have experienced something abnormal inside them? No, come on, give me some... For a laugh? Okay, I mean, if it was a jinn like me, he might do it for a laugh. But Ashik, acha. This is interesting because if you mean by that, they want to feel good in a jinn body. Why do jinn possess people? To drink with their left hand? I swear, I must definitely, forget being possessed, I must be a jinn. Loneliness, the jinn are lonely. They want to try pizza, of course, black magic. No, I mean, what's the real reason that jinn possess people? What are jinn trying to do when they possess people? Come on, people. Impurity, they want to make somebody... Nah, if you want to make them impure, just chuck some dung over them. You don't need to... Because jinn fall in love with humans. Fall in love. We're a different species. We're different genus, for God's sake. Why would they fall in love with us? Boredom. What about influence? People send out demons. Exactly, but why? Why? What are they doing? What is the purpose, the objective behind the jinn to do this? What is the objective? Being evil. Okay, good, Hamza. So mischief. Okay, excellent. Because they're trying... Wait there, let me do... That would be more jinn-like. But anyway, look, they do this because they want to create harm and mischief. This is the understanding that all these scholars write. Okay? Now you tell me. Right. These ulama, like Ibn Taymiyyah and all these people who wrote about jinn possession, and by the way, not all the ulama accepted jinn possession. Fakhruddin al-Razi, al-Qaffal al-Shashi, many other people denied jinn possessions, okay? Things like Sheikh, especially in our recent times, many of these ulama, Sheikh Shaltut of al-Azhar, Sheikh Mustafa al-Maraghi, Sheikh Jad al-Haq, you've got so many, countless ulama, Ibn Ashur, a lot of these people, even the way Al-Ghazali speaking in his Qanun Ta'wil shows that they cannot be possessed. Shawkani throws spanners in this works. Many people did problematize, although I accept that the majority of people did accept jinn possession. This was not because they were rationally convinced or they were found it to be textual. It was because they didn't have another answer. They didn't know how to answer the phenomenon that they were witnessing. So this was why they were kind of led to, they had to answer it somehow. It's a bit like the Black Death. You see, when you look at the plague, the bubonic plague that kind of swept over many parts of the Muslim world, killing almost 1/3 to 1/2 of the entire population wherever it went. And it spread rapidly. Now, the Muslim doctors at the time and the scientists did their best to try to isolate where this plague was coming from. They couldn't understand because at the time, obviously, they weren't, things like bacteria weren't discovered. Now, so they didn't realize it was the fleas and of the rats and things like this. But what they tried everything, the water, the this, the that, and they couldn't figure it out. Only when they gave up, then they said, "Oh, this must be a curse from God." You see, first they weren't prepared to accept that it was a curse. It was when they didn't have another answer, then they turned to these metaphysical answers. So you can read people like Ibn Khaldun talking about that. But anyway, let's come to this. So let's take a look at jinn possession being, they want to do this because they want to harm mankind. They want to create harm. So tell me, is this harmful? a jinn comes inside my body and he just has catatonic schizophrenia, which is like where you just freeze in a position, or you twitch every now and then, right? Or you just make weird sounds. This is the substantial harm. Let me tell you what these ulama write that the jinn can do. They say that the jinn can take any form. They can even take inanimate form. So Ibn Taymiyyah, all these people write this in their books. That means this screen that we are reading could be a jinn. Sorry, or watching. Maybe I'm not doing this. This is perhaps just a jinn pretending to be this screen right now. Maybe if you were the jinn and you wanted to create harm, why not pretend to be a page in the Quran? How do you know that the Quran you're reading is not a jinn or a page in it? The Quran, the true Quran, is protected, but that doesn't mean the copy that you have has to be protected, because there's printing errors in many prints of the Quran. Doesn't mean, so how do you not know? How do you not know that the book that came to you from Ibn Taymiyyah isn't actually a jinn, telling you that the jinn can possess? Let's take it up a notch. Okay, the jinn that just go, they must obviously be the low-Q, retarded jinn. What about the very intelligent, super intellectual ones? Surely they must have the capacity of going undetected. Right? So if some jinn have the capacity of going undetected, that means many people could be possessed right now, but we can't tell. So if you were a jinn trying to create harm, what is the best way you would do it? One, you would go undetected. Two, you would create terror on earth. So all the terrorists in the world, the major terrorists, how do we not know that ISIS, for example, are really just innocent people who have been possessed? How can we hold anybody to account? How can we punish people? It's not their fault. It's not his fault he's a rapist. He was just possessed. It's not his fault he's a murderer. He was possessed. He didn't mean to be a terrorist suicide bomber. He was just possessed at the time. But the jinn was an intelligent jinn. It wasn't like a normal jinn. It was an intelligent. Tell me, if you were trying to possess people and create harm, the best way is to do it undetected. So many of these exorcists say that, look, that so-and-so's got a jinn, but we can't tell properly. See, because the jinn is trying to go undetected. So if you really wanted to create harm as a jinn for mankind, what's the point of giving somebody a bloody trapped nerve by flipping their shoulder and having catatonic schizophrenia every now and then? You might as well become a terrorist, because you can potentially trigger a world war. So remember, you want to create maximum harm. You might as well, if you want to create religious harm, you might as well become a page in the Quran. That is wrong. You might as well become a wrong book. You might as well become a Facebook profile. You might as well become a TV screen. Pretend people are watching TV. They're not actually watching it. Maybe pretend that this is a sheikh giving a speech. It's not really a sheikh. The whole screen is just a jinn. You see, it sounds dumb all of a sudden. How can you hold anybody to account for anything? How can you punish people? How can they be? Because really, they could just be possessed. So saying, but what is the maximum that people can do? Maybe the jinn can't do that. Where'd you get that from, that the jinn can't do that? Where'd you get that from? But the jinn can't do that. How do you place limits on the jinn? I'm sorry, was that rationally, textually? How the hell did you place those limitations? So a jinn can be in people, can go undetected until the exorcist picks up on it. So you're telling me that some jinn who are a bit more intelligent through evolution and through their own intelligent design, they haven't figured that out and they can't go undetected. So if they possess somebody, then the best way is, look, we have to immediately absolve everybody from any crime, because you have to rule on the side of caution. Nobody can be accountable, because it could be a jinn. ISIS are probably just jinns. They're probably innocent people who are just jinns. have possessed them. This is nonsense. You see where this leads to? There is no more liability in Islam then. Everything is ridiculous. It is just, oh, it could be a jinn. You see, could somebody tell me, for example, 100% swear, like these exorcists, can they put their hand on the Quran and swear 100% that terrorists are not possessed? Can they do that? Can they say, I can swear by Allah 100%? No, they will say, look, I don't believe they're possessed, but there's a chance. So if there's a chance, then how can you not rule on the side of caution? So this whole thing becomes stupid. Believing in jinn possessions just destroys the whole fundamental of not only faith, brings in superstitions, it allows abuse to persist, it catapults the entire Muslim community into a medieval society, it allows the perpetual, it allows us to perpetuate abuse in the name of this, to make children and mainly women suffer, because these are usually, most of these are usually just attacks on children and women. And if Muslims didn't have this narrative, it's only because we have this narrative that jinns exist that we buy into it. And people say, well, oh, they say, well, if the jinn didn't exist, well, how did he get better? Well, have you heard of the placebo effect? Have you heard of the placebo? Why don't you run a little search on Google and check the scholarly art, check the results, the data results on placebo effect. Check it in double-blind experiments. Check where you will see people have actually recuperated from illnesses based on just placebo medicine, but given a good encouraging word. It's when they buy into the narrative, it works. We have endorphins, we have the brain releases certain self-healing, self-therapeutic kind of neurotransmitters which activate good health. They promote it. Likewise, when you get stressed out, you release certain neurotransmitters that cause negative impacts. This is why laughing is actually so good for your health. Because you actually release a lot of, the brain goes into certain activity that actually promotes good health. So, the thing, yes, I do have a degree in psychology if you're asking, but this is my interest. It isn't just about the degree. The thing is, look, when you say, what about things like ruqya? First of all, saying things like the Quran, when you use this word Quran, that the Quran is shifa'un lima fis sudur. Allah said it was was a cure for the hearts, not medicine. It wasn't medicine. That if this was a cure from kufr, it was a cure from superstition, it was a cure from having insecurities, it was a cure from having, it wasn't a cure for, so if it was a medical cure, then why were Muslims so immersed in trying to create medicine? Why didn't they just read Quran? Why is it the Prophet said in a hadith, tadawo, take dawa, فَمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ دَاءً إِلَّا أَنزَلَ لَهُ شِفَاءً. Allah, if He allowed for a disease to manifest, He allowed for a cure to manifest. And He said in a hadith, عَلِمَهُ مَنْ عَلِمْ وَجَاهِلَهُ مَنْ جَاهِلْ. Those who know of it, know of it. Those who don't, they are ignorant. That there is a cure for everything out there. He said, search. إِلَّا الْمَوْتِ, except death. Death is something that creatures, all organisms, living organisms will die. But beyond that, everything has a cure. In the world. Not in the Quran. It doesn't mean that, the cure for cancer is the Quran, the cure for headaches is the Quran, the cure for a broken leg is read the Quran. That's not medicine. This is a cure for the heart. Allah said, Shifa'un lima fis sudur. Read the verse. The verse is talking about kufr. It's not talking about medicating. It's not talking about medicine and health. It's talking about kufr. So, I'm not saying that you don't have a blessing in the Quran. You do have a blessing, which does impact us. But it's not medicine. It's not talking about medicine, right? That is a misrepresentation. So if you truly believe that, then why is it you go for surgery? Why would you want if your father or your mother or your relatives were going, I don't know, if they had any illness or they were having they needed a bypass or they needed some kind of, I don't know, some kind of infection. Why are you getting them treated? Why don't you sit them down and play 3 juz of the Quran? Why were Muslims the biggest proponents of hospitals throughout the Middle Ages? Why? Like, this is nonsense. Like, to say, well, oh no, the Quran came as a medical shifa. The Quran came as a spiritual, theological shifa to rid us of these kind of superstitious beliefs. You see, when the Quran came, people were believing in statues. They were believing in nonsense. Oh, this comes. And by the way, they believed in these monsters. The Arabic term for them was ghul. Ghul. Where we get the English word ghouls from. So, the Arabic word ghul, in a Sahih Hadith, in Sahih Muslim, the Prophet said, Wala ghul, there is no such thing as ghul. But the Arabs used to believe in ghul. And there are actually even hadith to speak about ghul, can you believe it? But they're weak. So the point is that these things people have them as beliefs. They are nothing. They're not even a stumbling block. They're a bloody wall for our community. The amount of harm that is done in the name of these things is nonsensical. And I'm surprised, but this is one thing that all groups have just kind of immersed themselves in. So, look, people, it is a bitter pill to swallow that it is mental health, okay? And the Muslim communities are so averse to this thing of mental health. They want anything but mental health. And the truth is, our Muslim communities are living in so much trauma. I mean, they grow up in extended families. They have bitter rivalries with people unnecessarily. They have unnecessary tension. They have like crazy restrictions. Marriage is usually another whole level of drama within the Muslim communities. They marry internally. They marry people that they don't want to marry. They have to live in intimate, sexual, close relationships with people like that they don't want to be in a relationship with. There is a lot of, not usually, but there is a lot of abuse, whether it's physical abuse in our communities, mental abuse, countless cases. The amount of cases I speak to sometimes on a daily basis of emotional abuse, of sometimes domestic violence, almost seriously, sometimes I'm distracted with other work, but if I attend to it, it's on a daily basis. All of these things are mentally traumatizing, and women have more restrictions in our communities than men. And so women, they can't go out, they can't have friends, they can't. And I know now things in this part of the world are changing, but they are married off against their will, they are forced to, and they're the ones who have hysteria. They're the ones who have like all these kind of, mainly these kind of jinn and all this kind of stuff. So the truth is they need to see a specialist that can help them, a psychiatric specialist, okay? These things are mental health. And I was telling you that I went once to see an exorcist, and he actually allowed me to speak to the jinn. I said that, can I interview the jinn? And so he said, yeah. And this guy himself was an exorcist, but he used to also, he was possessed as well, because he said he couldn't take out his own jinn because that was a really powerful jinn. And so, the thing is, anyway, I was a bit reluctant because the guy was well, stocky, strong guy, and I was thinking, bloody hell, he's gonna... I'm sitting next to him, so if anything happens, he's gonna obviously kill me first. So, anyway, eventually, so he agrees, and he was very confident that the jinn won't harm me or anything. So I was like, okay, then cool, let's do this. So he brings up the jinn, and he goes... This is exactly how he does it. Mufti, do you doubt it, Mufti? And he speaks like this. This was the whole interview was like that. And so we get into a conversation. So what I started to do was I just disrupted. I was constantly disrupting his flow. So when he would say something, I would just interrupt him. Because it would knock him off balance, because he wasn't expecting me to do that, you see. So he would just say like, I'm like, sorry, I asked your name. And he'd be like, I said that, I'm sorry, what part of name did you not understand? What's your name? And so he was like, so he said, well, my name is Hukma. So I asked him, well, Hukma, where are you from? So he said, I'm from the valleys of Kashmir. I said, well, wow. I said, well, you're a long way from home, soldier. What the hell are you doing in the UK, in Birmingham? So he said, he goes, I'm with, this person. And I go, well, how long have you been with him? He said, well, the usual scenario. He was a little boy sitting under a tree. The usual Newton story, Isaac Newton, an apple fell down under the tree. Here it's always a jinn was sitting under a tree. Right, so I said, okay. I said, well, So I said, well, why did you possess him? See, now this is interesting. He said, oh, I love him. So I said, no, I'm sure you love him. See, I didn't realize. I said, I'm sure you love him, but why did you possess him? He goes, no. I love him. So I was like, let's talk about love. You're talking about the homosexual love. Nutty nutty. Here's me thinking you're talking about agape, the humanitarian love. You're talking about eros, the erotic kind of love. So I said, well, that is rather interesting. This guy, by the way, hardcore practicing brother, extremely long beard, extremely long. I mean, like really long, like up to about the kind of long. So not like just like literally, not like your normal one fist, like probably about 4 fists long, like a whole, literally, I'm not joking, really long beard, stocky, a bit scruffy at the time. I'm sure he's fixed up by now. But at that time, really, so I'm thinking, whoa, okay. You see, so straight away, I started to realize, okay, I see what's going on here. Here is a guy who is religious, and he's struggling with homosexual thoughts. And to think, well, how can I, a practicing Muslim, have thoughts of homosexuality? It's so easy to displace that by projecting this onto a demon and then chastising the demon instead. You see, so the thing is, look, I'm not saying the guy was fake. I actually believe that he believed in what was happening. He wasn't, I don't think he was doing drama. I think he actually had made himself believe in everything that was happening. This is the thing, you see. It's psychological. It's delusional beliefs. It's not fake. It's not like, hey, somebody's here, so I'm just going to pretend to be ill. Like when you're trying to wag work. Here's a good one. What you do is you put your head off the bed like, so you get that croaky voice, and you're like, sorry, can't come into work today. Yeah. I don't mean that one that we've all done. Hashtag sick days. Right. God, the amount of sickies I used to pull, honestly. Anyway, I'm not talking about acting. I'm talking about these people have delusional beliefs. They may actually hear voices as well, schizophrenia. They may have borderline personality where they're having major swings, mood swings, struggling to, where they fear from things like loneliness, where they, you know, part of borderline personality, by the way, is people, they see people as either extremely good or extremely bad. And they can switch in a moment. So if you're a villain, you're 100% villain. And this guy is 100% a good guy. And they can switch. They can become a clear villain in a second. The other person, not them, the other, like, they can view the person and they become very paranoid. Extremely paranoid. And they fear loneliness massively. And sometimes this is why they struggle with relationships, because they have to call off relationships before getting rejection. Or they, I mean, look, some of these things may be to some extent normal, having some fear of certain things in everybody, but it's when that comes to, you see, the difference between a neurosis and a psychosis is having some weirdness or oddity is normal in everybody. That's neurotic behavior. Not erotic, neurotic. Okay. So the thing is, then when that becomes indiscernible and indistinguishable from reality, that you can no longer break away from what's real, at that moment it becomes psychotic. That's the dangerous end. Okay. So anyway, this jinn, I did ask this jinn, by the way, in that interview. I asked him, oh, so how old are you, Hukma? So he goes, I'm 500 years old. I said, oh. I said, 500 years old. Hey, you. I said, tell me, what languages do you speak? So he said, I speak Urdu. I go, well, that's funny, because Urdu is only about 200 to 300 years old. What did you used to speak before that? He was not expecting that one. He had no idea. He was like, huh? Oh, that was so funny. So I tried speaking to him in Arabic. Obviously, he had no idea what I was talking about. See, the thing is, people, they buy into these narratives, okay? Now, there have been a lot of... let me try and take some people's questions. So you mean there is nothing like demonic possession or possession by jinns? Not at all. There is no such thing as demonic possessions, okay? This is psychological. And people need help. And I understand why people get offended. Because they get offended because it's... You see, imagine somebody dear to them. Like, imagine my mother was struggling from something. And I will now struggle to say she's going maybe mental, or she's having mental... Look, by the way, there's many disorders. Like, let me give you an example. There's some which are not psychotic. Like, there's a disorder known as the Charles-Bonnet syndrome. Okay. Now, you can check this one up. This is where there will be some abnormality in the fusiform gyrus of the brain, which deals with things like recognition of, usually that's where you have the FFA as well, the facial fusiform area, how we can distinguish faces, human faces and stuff like that. So sometimes there's actually a condition when you can no longer recognize human faces as recognizable, and that's when the FFA is affected in the brain. But the fusiform gyrus, that can develop some abnormalities in the Charles-Bonnet syndrome, where it will affect certain neurons certain aspects of the brain that deal with recognition of things like geometric space, with teeth, with faces, and there's a good case. There's actually I tell you, there's a good interview by a famous neurologist. It's actually on TED Talks as well. Oliver Sacks. You can check that out, and he gives a good account of when he went to this place, and there was this lady who's becoming really old. She's in a care home, and she keeps seeing these people, and everybody thinks she's mental. And he asks her about, and she says, I see people in Eastern dress, and and he says, what are they doing? He says, they're not doing anything, they're just there sometimes. And he says, sometimes they have really long, sharp teeth. And she says, sometimes their faces stretch. And she goes, and sometimes I see like there's shapes, and it goes like from the ceiling to the floor. The whole thing is this geometric space. And buildings sometimes. And he asks her, are they attacking you or chasing? And she says, no. She says, except I know they're not real, but they're not a dream. They feel like watching a movie. And he explains to her that this is the Charles-Bonnet syndrome. And the whole thing is, but anyway, you can do research on this as an example, where they've actually seen in patients the same neural activity. So these people saying they see teeth, the same neural activity in normal specimen when they are looking at teeth is lighting up in this brain here. And this usually happens, the Charles-Bonnet syndrome, when somebody's sight or sometimes their hearing is becoming impaired. So as they start to lose sight, the brain is trying to compensate. And that results sometimes in abnormal activity in that region of the brain. And it triggers hallucinatory kind of effects. And this has been tested. This isn't just something I'm just saying, oh, it's a theory. This is tested. It's not so you see things. There's also things like you will see another interesting one, people with a palinopsia, okay, where they will see after images. Now, we all see after images. So if I look at this, if I look at something bright and I look away, I can still see the light, an after image of it, but it's very faint. But some people have a very strong, they suffer from this palinopsia, that they have a very strong actual after image. And you can go on YouTube, and people have actually done recreations of, so when I look at this phone and I look away there, I will see the exact same phone as real as they're over there. And that will happen with people as well. And that too is because of abnormality and certain neural activity that shouldn't be happening, but is happening in the brain. Now, if they saw a phone and you saw the phone again, it doesn't mean the phone really exists there. It doesn't mean you've got two phones now. But the same thing, if they saw someone and looked away and saw somebody again standing in the other, you can imagine how people like this in a rural part of the world can so easily think it's a demon. So things like this, I'm just giving you examples of many conditions that can be thoroughly explained today. Right, okay, let's take a look at some of the questions. Are we talking about dinosaurs? Nope, but I would love to talk about dinosaurs, inshallah, someday. I'm totally fascinated with I am fascinated with psychology, but I'm fascinated with things like anthropology and just archaeology and the study of just life on Earth and physics. I'm so fascinated with that as well. But why human beings ought to be very kind of curious about learning. Right, so let's I want to take a look if there were some questions that were being praying with the jinn. Right, I can't see any questions. I can see amazing. You could be on the on the dead. What is it? The Walking Dead or right? Please clarify. Somebody said, can you please clarify Sahih al-Bukhari Hadith 3268? Yeah, okay. Let me just pull that up. 3,000. The one about that's 3,267. 3,000. Come on, bro. What do you think? I'm a walking, talking database. At least share the hadith that you want us to clarify. I mean, attempted black magic on the Prophet ﷺ. Look, magic as well. There is, it's linked. That is a separate topic. But there was no such thing as, all Muslims accept that magic is, at best, magic is an illusion. They all accept this. It's simply illusory tactics. And things like hypnosis, mind control. They accept that is what is meant by magic. Then, beyond that, they all disagree. There is no agreement beyond that. So some people will say beyond that, oh, you can affect people. Other people say, no, you can't. One of the people who, early Imams who denied that was Imam Abu Hanifa. He said, no, you can't. And everywhere the word magic comes in the Quran, it is only talking about illusions. So Allah says, وَسَحَرُوا أَعْيُنَ النَّاسِ. They did magic on the eyes of people. وَيُخَيَّلُ إِلَيْهِمْ مِنْ سِحْرِهِمْ أَنَّهَا تَسْعَى. And it was made to appear as a khayal, as an imagination to them, that the snakes were moving from their magic. This is how Allah describes magic in the Quran. And even with Harut and Marut, that when they were taught people, it doesn't say that they were taught them what it was. It just says tactics by which they created enmity amongst people. And this could be done through, it doesn't have to be through hocus pocus and sit there and stab a doll. It could be done through things like mind control, through certain strategies, through being conniving behavior, and through things like this. And look, today there is actual research. This kind of stuff, there is actual research. People speak about telepathy on having recorded messages through enhanced radio transmissions. So electric kind of transmissions through enhanced radio waves can be sent to somebody. And because our brain actually, look, there's four forces here. You've got obviously the gravitational, the electromagnetic, you've got the nuclear forces, the strong and the weak. You do know that our brain is the only part of our body that generally has electroactivity. Okay, actually the neural activity is electronic. It's actually measured in electric waves, right? So there's been studies on how people can, through certain especially enhanced radio waves and stuff like this, they can pick up certain things. But this is not magic. Okay, this is actually science and physics explaining that. It's not it's not something magical that, ooh, hocus pocus, ooh, wizardry. So these things, at best, when we say magic, at best it's like mind control through hypnosis. Okay, and illusions. This thing about magic being done on the Prophet ﷺ is an incident which I do not believe to be accurate. We can dedicate another session sometime to that. There were many ulama earlier on in our tradition as well who rejected things like that. They said it was not only a fabrication, but it was an insult and an affront to the Prophet ﷺ. I do not believe it's nonsensical to believe that the Prophet was impacted by magic. It's nonsense. It's an insult and an affront to the honor of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They say he became sexually impotent and things like this. Ridiculous. I mean, I'm ashamed by and disappointed by the Muslims who normally claim to love the Prophet ﷺ so much, allowed and conceded to this transmission as being authentic and then accepting it. This is insulting. It is nothing but blasphemy, right? I condemn that narration. I do not accept it. Some Jewish guy, Labid ibn al-Asam, did this, and the Prophet would forget things, and he wouldn't know whether he's had sex or not, and stuff like this. And this is in Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim. What nonsense is this, right? Allah says, condemns those people that say, إِن تَتَّبِعُونَ إِلَّا رَجُلًا مَسْحُورًا. Verse of the Quran, Allah says those people are speaking nonsense who say that you follow a man who magic has been done onto. So this means, well, magic could have been done onto the Prophet. And they go, yeah, but it was done onto him, but not when he was being a prophet, not when he was speaking about Islam. Well, how do you know? How do you know? Because you're saying the Prophet didn't know when magic was done onto him. He only found out afterwards. So how do you not know then? How do you not know that there could have been some rulings he gave under the influence of magic? How do you not know? How do you know with certainty? They go, but Allah wouldn't let that happen. Well, apparently he did. Apparently, by your transmission, you're saying, well, Allah did let it happen. But he let it happen some of the time. Well, how do you not know that more powerful magic wasn't done and more effective that couldn't have been detected? Stupidity, nonsense. And I find this seriously an affront and an insult to the honor of the best of creation, according to all Muslims, that that we should believe that the Prophet was impacted, where he became forgetful and clumsy, and he became like, this is what the narrations say, he became clumsy and forgetful and wouldn't know when he's done something, and he'd be all lost, and this is what the narrations say, that he was confused all the time and lost and stuff like this. An attack on Islam, at the heart of Islam, that is. Right, so I do not accept that narration, and to me it clashes with the verse of the Quran where Allah condemns those people who say magic, could you follow a man who magic has been done onto, because then that is true. Magic was done onto him for a particular period, but it's true. To some extent it's true then. And then Allah is wrong. So we have to draw our understanding, okay? So I do not accept those things. It's very, very nonsensical. So, I mean, that is, like I said, magic at best, as is explained in the Quran, is speaking about illusory activities which create illusions, things like subliminal control, things like hypnotic behavior, mind control. These kind of things are what people traditionally referred to as magic. Okay. It's not an actual, and some people, by the way, there's certain Muslims who believe you can actually do chemical changes, chemical property changes. So I can turn this glass into a car. They've actually beat the medieval ages. They've gone like 2,000 years behind in the other direction. You can do chemical property change, they believe. Okay, that's interesting. Anyway, so this kind of stuff, see, it makes a mockery out of Islam. Okay, it makes a mockery out of Islam. So I mean, anyway, that's so when people say, oh, through magic we had such and such jinn sent at you, it's not actually true. That didn't actually happen like that. Let's see, actually, I don't know whether I have been right, guys. I think actually we've done quite a bit. Let's I'm just gonna, no messages there. So let's see if there were any last questions. I'll take them. It's a selfie camera. Yep. Can jinns affect people without actual possession? Jinns do not affect human beings. They have their own realm. We have our own realm. You know, we just get on with life as it is. Okay. What's the validity of amulets as treatments? I used amulets as incantations for fever and, sorry. I'm not sure about that narration. Malik reports in, right there. In the Muwatta, Abu Bakr went to, oh damn, I can't read the rest of the comment. Right, the thing is, ulama have allowed amulets. Many of them have. They've allowed things like, they call them tamima in Arabic, or ta'widha, and in Urdu tawiz. They were generally not supportive of them. Many, especially the early ulama, they were kind of like, well, if it encourages and helps people, they kind of allowed it. But the Salaf didn't have a culture of these kind of things. Imam Malik, the Maliki school generally says that they definitely didn't like this kind of thing as prevention, but to help somebody get over something, they wouldn't mind. So Ibn Abdul Barr, if you read Ibn Abdul Barr's discussion in the Istidhkar, he highlights that and how Aisha commented on it. So that's what I would say, is that, look, these kind of things, they don't have a... they're definitely not medical cures. Okay, they may have like a blessing, but I actually would advise against them. I wouldn't advise people to wear amulets, to wear taweez, because all it leads to is unfortunately superstition. So it leads to people just a sense of dependency, a dependency culture where people now say, oh my God, because I haven't got my taweez with me, something bad is going to happen. And one of the things that Islam condemned so harshly was superstition, and the Prophet used to hate superstition. It says in a hadith, كَانَ يُحِبُّ التَّفَاؤُلِ. He did like a positive kind of omens, but he hated وَيَكْرَهُ التَّشَاؤُمْ. He hated and couldn't stand bad, like things to do with bad omens, superstition, stuff like that. So that kind of stuff, and I feel amulets fall exactly into that. Look, if you want to pray to Allah, then as the hadith says, you know, your Lord is neither deaf nor, and neither far. Just call out to Allah. He is in front of you, as Allah says in the Quran, that inni qareeb, that when my servant asks, إِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيب, when your servant asks you about me, tell him I am close. I am close by. أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ, that I respond to he who calls out to me. So just, if you want to call out to Allah. I don't need something hanging off my neck to call out to Allah. Okay? Or to protect me from evil. Harut and Marut, according to certain people, they like to say were things like were angels. That's not true. Some people have said they were jinn or demons, like what's his name, like Sheikh Imam Qurtubi has gone to. Other people have felt maybe these were the kings, and it wasn't meant to read Malikain, it was read as Malikain and so on. But there's a whole discourse. But the point is, there's these two figures which Allah mentions in the Quran. They don't really impact, they don't carry any substantial value beyond that. So it's nothing to kind of get so distracted about. Yes, some may be psychological issues. Well, Naz Khan, I disagree strongly. I believe all of these things, there is no substantiation in the Quran for jinn possession. There is nothing in the Sunnah. It is neither textual nor rational. I'll tell you what it is. It is experiential. When you ask people why do they believe in jinn, it's because they think they've experienced something that they already have a narrative for. That's all it is. But then tell me, how do successful exorcisms work in the name of Ram, in the name of Vishnu, in the name of Jesus Christ? Why do those jinns get taught? Why does it work? So really, so they must have some truth to it as well. And if we're going to accept experiences, then why don't we accept all experiences? Why don't we accept reincarnations? Why don't we accept? Because why not? I mean, the famous cases of what's her name? Devi Kranti or whatever, the young girl who described in detail her previous life, and many other cases. Why don't we, if it's about experiences and witnesses, why don't we accept the witnesses who say that they've seen, in the hundreds and thousands and millions, have seen the miracles of the Hindu sadhus? Why don't we accept them? Why don't you even entertain it for a minute? You wouldn't even entertain, let's say, one of the most recent, very popular Hindu Swamis, Satya Sai Baba. I mean, you wouldn't entertain somebody like his miracles for even a second. Yet he has millions of witnesses for his. Why don't you accept it? It's just bigotry. It's pure hypocrisy, double standards. You see, you will use reason to dismiss it immediately when it's not your religion. So the truth is, this is not from Islam. So don't use religion to justify it. And then if it's experiences, then why not accept everybody's experiences? Why is it you only accept yours must be true and all Hindu experiences are nonsense and false? Why are Hindu experiences false? Why can't Hindu experiences be true? When they say, Lord Ram appeared as an avatar in such and such, why can't it be true? Why is it that Vishnu truly hasn't visited people? Why isn't it true? Why? That when they say that Hanuman did all these things, why is it not true? The story of Ganesh, why is this not true? Give me your evidences. You're just going to rely on reason. But yet when I present the same reason to you, then you rely on experience. And that too, subjective anecdotes, just stories of people. Stories can be obliterated within seconds because there's so many confounding variables. There's already a schema of ritualism, a narrative of demonic possessions. There's so much psychological play, so agency at play that you can't, it's not impartial. So this is where many Muslims are so bigoted on their stances that they don't. You see, this, first of all, you have to understand this is not religion. But then, when I say to you, why are you so dismissive of other people's experiences and stories? Just go on Google, YouTube, the amount of Hindu experiences, the amount of stories of reincarnation with detail, the amount of miracles that Hindu sadhus have performed, that Hindu swamis have performed, the amount of people that have claimed to have been in contact with Vishnu. Why do you reject these? Not even for 5 seconds do you entertain this. Not even for 5 seconds. Why? Because you say it's irrational. It doesn't make any sense. So tell me, how is Islam known to be made sense? How do you know Islam makes sense? How do you know? Because of reason. Imam Ghazali in his Qanun al-Ta'wil, he said it's ridiculous to mock the intellect. He said it is through the intellect. He said, bil aql yu'arafu sidq al-shara'. That he said, with the intellect and reason, we only know that Islam is true. How do you know Islam is true? How do you know? What, just because you were born Muslim, it made it true? Why is Islam true? Why isn't all this other stuff true? Have you ever reflected? It's because of reason and the intellect that we analyze and evaluate these different claims, and we find them nonsensical. Not just because I was born on Islam, my parents were Muslim, therefore Islam is al-haq. It doesn't work like that. That's stupid. That's dumb. Islam is true through reason and intellect. We believe it to be true because it has stood the test. It has stood the test of scrutiny. It has stood the test of evaluation. It has stood the test of criticism. Not because, oh, I had a great feeling, they just felt so good. That's ridiculous. You could lie in a spa and have a greater feeling. That doesn't mean anything. So, I'm sorry to say, but these demonic possessions cause so much harm, and they are not even an aspect of Islam. They are not even, first of all, I accept they're not a part of our beliefs, although people have made them such a passionate topic. People get so offended. Did you know, in our tradition, there is actually ikhtilaf, valid ikhtilaf within the tradition. Ibn Taymiyyah writes in one of his books, it is also said from some of the Sahaba, that they believe that hell was not eternal, that hell would freeze over. That is actually a belief. It is believed to also be the belief of Ibn Taymiyyah. Now, this is incorporated as, okay, people don't accept it, but it's a view. Yet, people get so worked up when you tell them that jinn possession isn't true. And this isn't even part of our belief structure. Anyway, people, inshallah, look... and trust me, the jinn are not interested in your love life. Okay, the jinn are not even a different. They're not. They're not even a different species, people. They're not even. You have the whole thing. Okay, so you're gonna obviously go right down from. You're gonna look at. It's gonna be. Obviously, phylum, kingdom, class, order, all of these, they are a complete I mean, they would fall into, I don't know, a whole different, a different phylum, a different kingdom. I would say at the top, they're entire different, they're not a different species, or a different genus, or a different order, or a family, or a different order, or a class, or a phylum. They are a different kingdom. It's like saying, do you fall in love with bacteria? Does somebody say, hey, I'm madly in love with that virus? You don't fall, how the hell do you fall in love with a virus? What the hell is wrong with you? It's not, they're not like a different, they're not animals, by the way, are a different, they fall within the same kingdom. Okay, it depends. So they might even be primates, they might even be, different orders, different families, different... But they're from these things, they're from this kingdom. So when you say jinn, they're not even from our kingdom. I don't mean kingdom, the English word kingdom, okay? I mean the whole thing. So tell me, how do jinn fall in love with insan? That's ridiculous. It's dumb. It doesn't make any sense. Right? So they've got no interest in your love life. okay, in saying, oh, so what happens is human beings just have a bad, like, look, it's a human issue. After a while, people fall out with people. People fall out of friendships. If you went back in time and met yourself 10 years ago, you'd probably give yourself a slap for being so obnoxious. So this is, we can't stand ourselves. So imagine you've got two people in a relationship who are living together and they're both continuing to develop. One may develop differently, the other differently. Then you have things like desensitization, because in the modern family structure, everybody's always in each other's face. So obviously with desensitization, there's going to be things like naturally sexual desensitization. There's going to be things like normal bickering, fundamental need for human space gets compromised. And people don't have their own space, their own time. They have other stresses, maybe financial, maybe other thing, familial involvement. There's fights going on. There's human personalities conflict. So with all this going on, they say, oh, you know what it is? I know what it is. It's a jinn. A jinn has come and wrecked my love life. So some guys, no, bro. That's like saying a bacteria's come and has ruined my love life. The bacteria is jealous. So ridiculous. That's like saying my goldfish is so jealous that my goldfish has ruined my love life. Anyway, people, let's, inshallah, may Allah give us all the ability to kind of wisen up a bit and kind of improve and help deal with these situations. Those people who are suffering, I don't think they're doing it as a drama. Those who are truly suffering, I feel that they have just bought into this narrative which they already have. May Allah make things easy for them. I hope they do seek out professional help, and hopefully that, you know, they can undergo some therapy, they can undergo some treatment and improve, and in time Muslims will continue, especially in the West, I hope, to move away from these kind of superstitions. Right, people, with that, I'm going to leave you to it, inshallah. So I'll catch you on Monday, on my Monday Nights with Mufti. Till then, if you're on Facebook, add me, inshallah. Likewise, on Twitter, you can follow me. And on Snapchat, it's Malm2014, MALM2014. You can, inshallah, shoot me your questions. I'll try to respond whenever I can. So till then, right, remember me in your du'as. Take very good care of yourselves, people, inshallah. Till next week, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.